Ian St. Clair, content manager for playcolorado.com. Welcome back on the Business Break.
It's great to be with you, Ryan.
Always great to have you on and get that inside perspective on what's going on in Colorado's sports betting market. Ian, let's talk more about that. Legal sports betting in Colorado just reached its second year mark. Some might say its second birthday, Ian, on May 1st. Between online sports betting and retail sports book, the state continues to break new records. What's your take on year two, and give us your outlook for the year ahead?
I think we're just seeing the start of what the Colorado sports betting market is capable of. And the fact that we're getting close to the 2-year birthday for this market is crazy, just given all that's happened across the country and the world since that time. But you mentioned that the market continues to shatter records. In January, it set the all-time record for a single month with $570 million in handle. Now, handle is just the total money brought in. And the fact that it got 570 million shows you what this market is capable of. It dipped a little bit in February, which is expected with not as much NFL football to bet on. But I think you're seeing this market starting to mature. You're starting to see it come into its own. And as I said, we're seeing just the beginning of what this market is capable of. And I think eventually it's going to be a consistent over $550 million driver for sports betting across the country, which would make it a top 5 state.
Wow. Yeah, you expect that trend to continue throughout the rest of the year?
Maybe not throughout the rest of the year, because obviously there's a dip in the summer when you don't have the NBA playoffs, which is the NBA is the driver for sports betting in Colorado. It is always at the top for most bet sports, even with the NFL. So that shows you what fans think about NBA betting in this state. But I think it's going to be in that when you have those heavy betting months, and that's when you have college football, you have the NFL starting in August and September, and then the NBA coming back up in October. That is going to be what I think is going to show you what this market is capable of. And obviously, there's a recent addition to the Denver Broncos and their quarterback. That's going to be very interesting as well. So it may not be 570 million for the next 5 months, but it's going to be, I think, in between 450 to 500 million. I think that's going to be what the state typically gets. And if you look at if you go to playcolorado.com and you look at our revenue report, you're starting to see that trend. In October, it was 491 million. In November, 475. December, 461. January, 573. February was a little bit lower at 440. I think that might be the floor right now, but I think you're going to see it between 450 and 500 million in the off months. Now, when the NFL is back, that's where you're going to start seeing it get close to 600, I think.
I bet. Now, you talked about this with the NFL and the NBA, and we got the Rockies, and we got soccer. We're a sports state here in Colorado. So what are the top 5 sports for sports betting in the state by the numbers?
So if you look at February, it was pro basketball, NCAA basketball, pro football. And remember, that's just with the Super Bowl. There weren't any other playoff games in February. So that was all Super Bowl, and that was 31 million. Then you have hockey, then you have soccer. I think when you go to December, and that's where you have the NFL, you had NCAA basketball, you had NCAA football, that gives you a better idea of what this state bets on. And it was pro football, NBA basketball, NCAA basketball, NCAA football, and hockey. Hockey is a little bit lower than that. And then in the summer, obviously, baseball will be the top because there's really nothing else to bet on.
Oh, God, it's baseball. It's all right.
Right. And the fact that the Rockies are off to a quick start and a hot start, I'm curious to see how that plays into the betting interest as well. But those are typically the 5 sports that this state bets on.
Okay, so here's a question. You kind of start to touch on this, Ian. Here's a question people want to know the answer to. Is it may have a major impact on the Denver Broncos Super Bowl chances, as well as Colorado's regional economy. How are the sports betting markets reacting to Russell Wilson behind the center this season?
That's something that I have been the most keen on since the trade was announced. And we haven't gotten the March numbers yet. We should be getting them at some point in the next 7 days before the end of the month. that is going to show you what kind of interest there is for betting on the Broncos. Because as you know, as everyone watching this knows, the Broncos have not been good since sports betting launched in this state. It's been difficult. It's, as a fan, as a bettor, you're always looking to bet against the Broncos unless you have that line where you think maybe there's a chance that they can pull the upset. Now we're going to know, are the Broncos and Russell Wilson going to drive this market? And I think the answer is yes. It's just a matter of how much. And you'll see it with the futures bets. What do the sports books, what's the biggest liability? That's what I'm going to be looking at too, is you'll typically get the releases from the sports books on what is the biggest liability. I think the Broncos are going to be on that list now that Russell Wilson is in play. But we say it all the time, the Broncos are the king of this state. And now that they have a franchise quarterback again, and with sports betting, it's going to, the number, I don't know what it is. I can speculate. I think it's going to be a big number, but we'll know for sure. But I'm excited to see that, because the Broncos are obviously the driver for this state in terms of sports interests. So now we'll see it with sports betting.
Well, this is Bronco country. The excitement is palpable. I know the expectations are very high for Russell, and we all want to see him be successful, and the Broncos to have a great season just as a fan, if nothing else. Ian, so much going on in the industry with the ongoing expansion of legal sports betting state by state by state. What story, though, are you most interested to cover on playcolorado.com this year, and why might it be important?
So the Broncos are for sale. We're getting close to having the winner announced. I think we're down to 5. Mike Kliss with 9 News said it might be 1 or 2 more on top of the 5 that we know about. The thing that I'm most interested in is the new owner going to be as all in on sports betting and even esports as the current regime with Joe Ellis and the Pat Bowlen Trust, because they were the first team in the country to get a sports betting deal. Now they have 2 others. There are sports betting tents and sports betting ways and books in Power Field at Mile High. There's one with Betfred. And then there's a betting lounge inside the stadium on the north side with BetMGM. So I'm curious to see, is the new owner going to be as all in on sports betting as the current regime? And whether, I mean, obviously it's a big driver. I think now, I mentioned the interest in Russell Wilson. There's going to be interest in these sports betting, in the sports betting tent on the south side with Betfred and the BetMGM lounge. Now there's going to be interest with Russell Wilson. So how is that going to take a part in all of this? So that's, I think, the most interesting aspect of this ownership switch, so to speak, is what does it do for sports betting, and is it going to be as all in as it has been since its launch in May 2020?
Be fascinating to watch this all play out. Ian St. Clair with playcolorado.com. Always great to hear the inside scoop on Colorado's sports betting market. Thanks for joining us on the Business Brief.
Anytime, Ryan. A pleasure to be with you.